Is it live? Is it live? Yeah, hello. I think I'm live. Haha, look at that. I did it again. I synced up the stream. I'm live. Yay. Happy Friday. Oh, let me shut him up. Hang on. Happy Friday, and um I'm gonna stream for an hour. We have the gifted, the Friday. Every week on Friday, we have a gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent Zoom. Sometimes it's a pop up if there's a particular topic it's centered around, but tonight's just an open chat. So if you are interested in that, oh, look at my friend Cheryl in the audience. Hey, Cheryl. Cheryl is part of she'll be there tonight. She's part of the Zoom. If you're gifted, think you might be gifted, twice exceptional, which means gifted and neurodivergent. If you like nerdy, intellectual, deep, intense conversations or discussion, come and join us. Just email me primalhex, primalhex at gmail.com, or find me on Twitter at primalhex, same name. It's the name's in my YouTube profile. My Twitter link is under the description, so you can contact me either place, and I'll get you a link to come join us at the Zoom in an hour. I was on Twitter live doing some, because I tweet live for about 15 or 20 minutes a day there too. And I was discussing all the latest drama with Steven Crowder, because he's all over Twitter, and the video. And Dylan Mulvaney put out a video, and the Twitter ate my videos. So I was going to go over a few tweets today and talk about that, but I don't know if I want to say the same stuff all over again after just saying it. Come on by. We enjoy chatting, and we are deep. Yes, yes, we are deep. we're a lot of things. So I guess I'll get into the Twitter drama first, and then also I realized yesterday, the whole time I was talking about mentorship, I was making this jigsaw puzzle, and I thought I was sharing my screen, but when I went back and watched it, I wasn't even sharing the screen. So it looks like I'm talking to the camera, but I'm actually working on a jigsaw puzzle the whole time. And so today I'll try to actually share the screen, so you won't have to look at my face. But let's get into Twitter. Ooh, hang on, check a notification. Okay. I had a few tweets bookmarked that I wanted to comment on. The Dylan Mulvaney video, I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's 3.5 minutes long, but y'all know I'm not the biggest Dylan fan, and I still don't like him, and I still think he looks like a boy. Dylan, you look like a boy. But he put this video out yesterday, I guess, and I didn't realize the kid's only 26, so I have to keep that in mind too. I have to say that despite my own personal feelings toward him and about him, this is him by far at his most mature. I think we're starting to see a little bit of growth and maturity from Dylan. And I'm not going to say I was like full-blown inspired by the video, but I was more impressed than anything else I've seen from him. And as somebody who's worked with kids, and I love watching kids grow and develop, it could be performative. A lot of it could be performative, but he seems to be showing a little more self-awareness, which you have to have a certain amount of self-awareness anyway to be a theater queen like he is. But anyway, I'm not going to recommend the video because I don't want to have to live with myself for recommending a Dylan Mulvaney video. But if it happens to come across your feed and you happen to hit play and you happen to sit through the 3:30 minutes, it won't be the worst 3:30 minutes of your life. I'll just say that. So that's kind of me trying to give him his props, grudgingly and reluctantly, but I got to stay consistent and faithful to my actual impressions, and this one made a not too bad of one. Oh, this video. This one I do want to play. At least a little bit of it. This is an AI. Her name is Annie or somebody. I forget. And she's somebody you could talk to. I mean, we had Eliza growing up on the Radio Shack computers. It was a cassette tape, and you play the cassette tape to load it into the computer, and then it was a text-based chat. And it was just like, it was kind of like AI is now. And she'd say like, "Hi, I'm Eliza. What's on your mind today?" And you'd say, "Oh, Eliza, I'm feeling depressed." And she'd say, "That's interesting. Tell me more. Why do you think you're feeling depressed?" And she had these little prompts that would play off of whatever you type. This reminds me of like a fancy Eliza, but I'm going to make some comments on it and mostly criticisms as it plays. Let me blow it up. Hope y'all can hear it.
Not too good. A little tired, but I just got back from vacation.
Ooh, I don't like her.
Days off with kids.
First of all, humans don't wobble their head
That
around
sounds amazing.
like this.
I'm
She
so
looks like a
happy you
bobblehead.
had a great time with your kids.
She's not real to me. She's very phony, and this is my biggest thing that jumped at me the minute like the first few seconds I watched this. She has no warmth whatsoever. She doesn't exude whatever she's trying to exude that's like comforting and maternal. It is not coming through to me. My autistic brain is not picking up. She looks like a cold, frigid, robotic, disengaged female. And she makes this like little sexy eye motions. That's not appropriate when you try to listen to somebody's problems. Like you try to seduce them at the same time. Laurie Anderson did her series. Damn, what was it called? The War Without You. What? Fighting the War Without You, Losing the War Without You, Winning the War Without You, something like that. It's a series of 6 lectures she did during COVID, and she did them all through Zoom, and she uses AI in some of them, and she puts her face. I'm tired of her. I'm gonna turn her off. She puts her face on different celebrities and kind of talks in their voices or her own voice sometimes, but using their image. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. She did one of her face on Lonnie Anderson, and it had that weird kind of, the eyes were blinking all over the place, trying to look sexy. So anyway, if this is your, I work in mental health, so if this is your only access to mental health care, I'm a little worried about you, and I'm a little worried about the trend that this is not going to replace a live human to me. But well, this person who tweeted it found it surprisingly human. I do not. I picked up right away that she was a computer lady, and she didn't seem. If she was an actual therapist and that was her deportment when I was in her office, she wouldn't see me more than one visit. The next tweet I wanted to thing from Herbert Marcuse, drag pedagogy. So they had that paper that the Little Miss Hot Mess. That's academic. She's an academic paper. She's the founder of Drag Queen Story Hour, or one of them. She put out an academic paper with some other guy on how drag pedagogy which is queer theory, is an attempt to educate kids in like these methods of queer theory that subvert the heteronormative paradigm and kind of indoctrinate them into the queer paradigm. Anyway, drag pedagogy reminded me that there's another paper where the authors clearly state their intentions to subvert language, like I'm doing right now, trying to pronounce these words, and use it to fool parents into letting them groom children into queer theory. And I couldn't find a full version of the paper online. It was behind a paywall. It's one of those ResearchGate papers. But it's called Navigating Parental Resistance, Learning from Responses of LGBT Inclusive Elementary School Teachers. And it was something like parents' reactions to queer theory is not a reason to not teach it and continue trying to. I don't know, growing up gay, we didn't I didn't need that as a gay person coming up, and as a gay adult. I never considered once that, well, we need something in the schools to indoctrinate the next generation, or they're not going to grow up with a positive gay sense of themselves. We have representation, which supposedly matters. Apparently not enough, because we still need teacher therapists to continue to inculcate people that it's okay to be gay. But for me, the representation was enough. Even in the 80s and 90s, the little bit of positive gay representation you had was enough. You had a few supportive adults were enough. They have galore more of that now. And it's like they're acting like the problem's even worse. Parents are even worse. The homophobia is even worse. When I've watched it, nothing but improve and exponentially improve. So I'm just skeptical of the whole thing. I think it's an ideology that they're trying to subvert what they perceive as a oppressive white cis heteronormative oppressive capitalist patriarchy supremacy, and they want to reverse the power hierarchy. Like they're never gonna, no one's ever gonna give them power. And I'm not talking about gay kids in general. I'm just talking about these ideologues that this is their whole life, the activist. They don't have anything else going for them. So no one's going to give them power. So if they don't find some way to take power or subvert the current power structure, then they're not going to have a shot at anything else. I'm just surprised how many people are going along with it. And I understand it's because that you want to help gay people or oppressed people or vulnerable people. But I have news for you. Gay people are not oppressed in today's age. Drag queens, transsexuals, they're not oppressed. They have everything everywhere. The gay flag is almost a second national flag now. And you see it even globally at sports events and product placement. Go check all those companies' websites all over the world, except for the Middle East, and see how many gay logos they have. That's not oppression. So this narrative that you're this victimized minority that's oppressed by larger society is not tenable. It's not standing up to even a cursory glance at reality. Look out your window. It's not raining oppression anymore. It's over. That storm is past. Integrate in society. If you can't integrate because you don't like white men or males or whatever, that's your problem. Go work with a therapist and learn how to integrate into society. Or do what you're doing now, I guess. Try to find enough people to build your own. But you're going to have to fight the rest of society for it. I mean, we're not giving up our society for you. All right. I'll do a few more Twitters and then I'll gay cigarettes. No, that's something we did not have back then. Although we did have the Virginia Slims, which were the long ones that the gays would like to smoke, and the Capris, which I'm even I guess I'm not embarrassed to admit that I smoked for a little while too. My favorite were the cloves though, because they tasted good. Oh, Jeremy got a dog. That's cute. Possibly even a new home. Oh, it's Tigger's birthday today. Happy birthday, Tigger. Tigger Dan. He's a good follow. Jeremy and Tigger Dan are both good follows. Urban Ninja and Tigger Dan. All right, I'm going to check in on the men's and then the Satanist, and I think we'll be done. And I'll go back to the puzzle. Oh, Washington School District. Is that Washington State? Yep. Axes music class to fight white supremacy because some folks in the community experience things like a tradition of excellence as exclusionary. And by the way, it's mostly white people up here. There's very few. They have one of the lowest percentage of black people in the country who would want their children to be protected from a tradition of excellence. They also cut their gifted programs. So now they're coming after the music programs, the arts programs. Back then, when I was growing up, it was the right wingers, the Jesse Helms and those people were coming after the NEA and trying to cut all the arts funding. And there were people trying to cut arts out of school or reduce arts classes. And now who's doing it? The left. The same people that were hollering, or the same party that was hollering at the right for doing it in the 80s, are turning around and finding a reason to do it now. That's what I'm saying. They just want the same power they're fighting against. They're just trying to subvert the hierarchy, so they're the ones doing the same thing instead of having it done to them by people they don't like. Ooh, drone footage, reindeer cyclone. This is reindeers. Ooh, it looks like rats. Like the scientists do lab, like the lab mice that they research. It looks like a bunch of mice. Ooh, wow, it's taking you in the reindeer. Remind me to tell you the story one day, not today, but I honestly thought I was going to meet my end one day from some cows. We were picking mushrooms in the clan cow fields on the outskirts of the town of Louisiana I lived in, and my friends started macing the cows, and they started circling us like this. It was like a concentric circle of cows, and then behind them there was another circle, and they were like closing in on us. And I thought, oh no, this is it. This is how I'm gonna go from cows. And I finally found a break in them and managed to run out. And it was scary. It was one of the scariest moments in my life. Okay. All right. I guess so much for Twitter. We'll end on the reindeers. Ooh. Okay. So today's topic, well, a few announcements, or did I make them already? The gifted Zoom in about 45 minutes. You can DM me for the link. And tomorrow, 80s dance party. Woo, woo, woo. 80s music. Put your 80s gear on. Whatever you wore in the 80s, the neon, the hair scrunchies or twisties, the acid green, lizard skin, pants, the orange, neon orange go-go boots, the LA looks, hair products, Guess shirts, whatever, chick, Z Cavaricci jeans, or just come as you are. Put on your pajamas, your bathrobe. We don't care, and you don't even have to dance. Some people come and just watch, but it's gonna be. You might find it hard not to want to get up and shake your booty or your groove thing, which that's 70s, not 80s. But come anyway. We're gonna play and when I say 80s, it's gonna be 80s style music. So there may be there's a lot of modern music that's in that genre. So it's gonna be 80s, the 80s style, synth pop, dancey stuff. So that's at 7 p.m. Central tomorrow. Okay. Today my topic was going to be friendship, again in the larger context of community. I was talking yesterday about mentorship and all the different mentors in my life, and I think I'm going to kind of do the same thing, but with friendship and all the different ways people bond and the value that those bonds can have in creating a larger sense of community. Because community happens, you have the individual, and the individual needs or wants to be healthy internally, intrapersonally. And then part of that, like the healthier you are, the healthier one-on-one individual connections you'll be able to form with people. And as you form connections with healthy people, it contributes to your own health. So all of this is kind of this self-reinforcing feedback mechanism that I've talked about before. So friendship are those individual bonds that create the larger sense of community. And then you have so you have friendship, mentor. Those are some of the bonds in this interpersonal network that is nearly identical with community. I think there's a added effect of community at a certain scale that starts to filter back down to these individual levels, the interpersonal and intrapersonal. But I'll get into that another day. That's abstract. I was the oldest of four, and when I was in the first grade, several things happened around that time period that was kind of milestones for me in my life, and even sorts of rites of passage, which I want to talk about one day too, but it probably won't be today. My mom met my stepdad. I got tested for the gifted program, so I got identified as gifted, and this was like toward the end of the first grade. So really, the summer between first and second grade, and then going into second grade, all of the events I'm talking about kind of took place. I remember the original Star Wars movie came out in early 1977, and my stepdad took me and my stepbrother to see it. And so I know that it was around that time that he came into our life. And so I had a stepbrother and stepsister come into my life, and me and my stepbrother were friends, and we played a lot and played outside. We grew up in the country. Just we had a lot of fun, all kind of crazy, wild outdoor stuff we used to do. And about the same time, I remember us at swimming lessons that summer. We had an old lady in our town that had a concrete in the ground swimming pool, and she would teach swimming lessons. And my mom signed us up, and there was another family that was also signed up that summer, and it was a lady my mom had gone to school with, and it was me and my sister, and this lady had a son my age and a daughter my sister's age. And she had also just recently ended her marriage and moved back to the town that her and my mom had grown up in. And we're talking the village of 300 people or so. And so we were at the swimming pool, the swimming lessons that summer of 77. And me and the guy started talking, and we found out we had a lot of things in common. We liked the same TV shows and kind of superhero characters and stuff like that. And so we kind of struck up a little friendship. And then when the second grade started, that was his first year as a new kid in our school, and I had been going there Head Start, kindergarten, first grade. So I kind of like welcomed him. I was like his buddy. I made friends with him and welcomed to school and introduced him to everybody. And we became like this. His name was Dustin. We became best friends. We were over at each other's house all the time. We spent the night at each other's house. We would play at school all day long. We'd play on the playground at recess. We play superheroes and super friends. And eventually we started getting into Hardy Boy and Nancy Drew mystery books, and we would read those, and we'd play detective and mystery stories and just whatever our imaginations could think up. We swapped the same books. We went to the library together and checked out the same books. We were so excited to share the books we were reading with each other. We watched the same TV shows. Our interests were so aligned, and we had so much time to spend bonding around each other. And then after school, sometimes in the evenings, we would talk on the phone with each other because we didn't have internet or social media. So that was our social media, the rotary dial black telephone. And so we became very close. And when I moved away from the town in junior high, I was about 11, sixth grade, we kept in touch, and you kept in touch by letter writing, or every now and then you could beg your parents to let you make like a 10 or 15 minute long distance call, which with Dustin was challenging because this quality about him was normal for me, and I took it for granted because he was my first friend, my first best friend, and the only close friend I had at the time. But looking back, I see how unusual this quality was and how it kind of prepared me for a lot of the person I became later in life. Dustin was a talker. He would talk your ear off. If he told a story about going to the store to buy milk, it was every detail of the story. He left the house and he walked down the sidewalk, and he noticed that on the left there was a green bush, and as he walked he passed another lamp pole, and the lamp was on. It's not always on, but it happened to be on that night. And then he walked. It's like every story was an hour long just to tell the basic plot. And I love that about him. I loved him to death. He was a dear friend. But what it helped me do, I became a listener. I didn't know people didn't like that. Was my norm for people to just talk, and like he didn't tell anything that wasn't germane to the story. He didn't like ramble on and go on tangents that didn't relate to the story. It was just heavily laden with detail. So I learned to just sit there and listen, and well, what's next, and what comes next, and what comes next, and what comes next. So he'd build these really detailed, layered, complex stories, and I was the person listening to them. And it never crossed my mind to say, get to the point, or move the story along, or I don't need to know that. That's too much detail. what I learned from listening to stories, I'm not so much a storyteller. I'm a story listener. I grew up listening to all the old people tell stories, and what I learned is that stories have their own life. They have their own beginning, their own form that they take as they develop, their own ending, organic form. Aristotle even talks about this in the Poetics, and I allow that natural form of each individual has their own way of telling a story, their own kind of organic form for that story, and I allow that to emerge. So in my work that I do, and when I was working on a volunteer on the warm line, the kind of part of the crisis line here, I just listened, and there's a certain power in listening that gives people, that empowers the speaker to allow that form to emerge, and it kind of empowers them to express and kind of discover and express their authentic self through that space that you hold by listening. And I think I learned all of that through Dustin, through just listening, tell his stories and the dialogue. And I'm a talker too. I can talk as much as listen, as you know from watching these live streams. I do an hour a day, but I can talk or listen. If somebody's telling an interesting story, I'm all ears. I'm like this, just wrapped. Or if I have something that I really have to get out and say, I can talk as long as I need to say it. So I'm pretty balanced I'm talking and listening. And so through my friendship with Dustin, I learned to really listen closely and in great detail to the things that people were trying to express that were important to them. And it never crossed my mind to do anything else. And Dustin and I were friends for years and years and years, and we're well into adult life. And that was just his natural mode, and it was my natural mode to listen to that. So I think it helped me with clients and with the people I worked with. I can listen as long as they need me to listen, and I can let them get their story out. One lady called on the phone line I was working on one night, and she's like, I'm like, hi, how may I help you? Blah, blah, blah. My name is Jeff. I just need you to listen. I have so much to get off my chest, and don't say a word and don't interrupt me, and I'll let you know when I'm through talking. I just need someone to listen. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm here for. Go talk away. And I sat there and I just listened, and I listened and I listened, and she finally finished up, and she's like, oh, thank you so much. I just need to get it off my chest. How long was that? I imagine it was like 20 minutes. I'm like, no, it was closer to 45 or 50 minutes, but that's no problem. I don't mind listening. And so all that is to say, I was approached one day by somebody here that wanted me to help teach a course on listening, like how to help people become a better listener. And I thought about it for a while, and I'm like, I don't know how to teach that. I don't even know how I learned it. Just like I don't remember learning how to read. It's just something I've always known how to do. I've always known how to audit when people are speaking. And it's not a special skill I'm conscious of using. And it's not something I would know how to transfer to another person. To me, either they have the ability to listen or they don't. A lot of it's interest. I listen because I'm interested. I'm truly, genuinely fascinated in what people are saying. If somebody's boring or saying something I'm not interested in, I can still listen. But part of my brain's going to wander. Part of my brain's going to tune out. So it only works because I have the curiosity and interest to listen in the first place. I'm not in a rush to get to the end. I'm more fascinated by the process of storytelling itself and the path that stories take as they're being told. So it kind of doesn't matter how long the story is or where it's going. I'm immersed in the storytelling itself, the act of being told a story. And oh, I lost it. Hang on, it's going to come back. Hopefully. Listening, where the story's going. Oh, well, maybe it won't come back. I had some other little point to make. So that's kind of one of the benefits I got from Dustin. And then he eventually moved to the other town that was closer to Texas and more Anglo-Saxon oriented than Cajun. And kind of like an agricultural rodeo type town. And I was a misfit. I was an oddball. I was a nerd. There were like several things that it was very bad to be in that culture at the time. And one was a nerd more than anything else. They hated intellectuals. They hated nerds. Gay, they were not too happy about. This was during the Satanic Panic, where everything was devil worship. If you played Dungeons and Dragons and you were a nerd like me and you were gay, you had so many strikes against you. You might as well not even show up at school, which I didn't. And I told that story too, and I ended up getting put in that gifted program as a result. So I didn't make friends easily at that town. But the few people I did make friends with were the nerds. There was this girl in my class that loved to read. She loved books, and I made friends with her very easily because we like always had a book with us. I always had a book with me at school. At recess, I was on the playground with a book. During class, when I didn't have work to do, I had the book, and this girl was the same way. So we like the two kids in school that read and carried around books. So we bonded over that. We became very, very close over the years, particularly after high school, when we were adults. And then I had another friend who was also highly intelligent. He was in the gifted program. These were all people in the gifted program, the school gifted program, not the residential one. And he became, we used to play Dungeons and Dragons together. He was really into computers. He was intelligent. He could talk about politics and culture and what was going on in the world. He had a broader perspective than just what was going on in the local town. And so we became close. And those were kind of my two main friends in the town. And the first ones I had made since Dustin, who I had to leave to move to this town. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention about Dustin, he was also gay. And we didn't know what gay was at the time, but it was really positive for me to grow up with another gay person that shared common interests. And so when we did both end up coming out of the closet, we had this deep, deep friendship that had built up from childhood. And that was just one more thing that added to it, that enriched the friendship. So growing up with another gay person, even though we didn't really consciously know ourselves as gay at the time, really helped me develop a positive identity around being gay. Instead of being the lone, isolated gay kid that didn't know any other gay people, I knew Dustin. We were similar enough that I could feel okay about my sexuality just because I knew that he was so cool about it himself as a friend. And he came out later, but he was still supportive of me when I was coming out. All of my friends were, in fact. So I had the people I met at the junior high school that I just mentioned. And then we, in seventh grade, I was 12 years old, 12 and a half. I attended that gifted program. And that's where I met, like, I don't know how I would have met these people outside of that in my life. They were from all over the state. My best friend, who's now the director of the program, in fact, we were roommates almost the whole time we were there. And he's from New Orleans. He was a city kid from New Orleans. We got really, really close. We shared a room together. We would lay in the beds at night and talk and all, like, because they had a lights out at a certain time. So when they called lights out, we would stay up in the bed and talk and laugh and cut up and just entertain ourselves until we fell asleep. So we had a lot of deep conversations that way and bonded. We would bond from being in the same classes together and kind of experiencing the same wild times that we got ourselves into as gifted kids on a college campus. And there was another girl in my class that I got really close to. She was also from New Orleans. And Josh, my friend from New Orleans, was the first person. He invited me after the first year, between the first and second year, he had invited me to go to New Orleans and visit for a weekend. And that was my first time alone in a big city. I think my aunt was taking a road trip that way, so she dropped me off and then they picked me up on the way back. And so I remember we got to ride a city bus. We went to the French Quarter. We went to the big 3 4 story bookstore that they have on Canal Street, or they used to have. And it was so fast, like he opened up a whole new world for me by inviting me to visit him in New Orleans. And I went several times. He also opened up a whole new world of music for me. I discovered music became my escape. Like eventually I outgrew Dungeons and Dragons, and by the time I had reached high school, I had discovered music, like originally pop music, 80s pop music, and then alternative and rock and stuff like that. And a large part of that was because of my friend that I'm talking about from the Gifted program. He brought music with him, like underground alternative music. Sonic Youth is my absolute favorite band. The first time I heard Sonic Youth was through him. Lou Reed, he's a big Lou Reed fan. I discovered Velvet Underground and Lou Reed. So a lot of the alternative punk, post-punk, indie rock which became the foundational music for my life, I discovered through him. And at the Gifted program in general, just through all of the kids there were probably over 100 of us in any given year. I discovered movies that I would never have found in my town, books that I would never have, authors I would never have even heard about. So it was like this what is it in alchemy, the sealed, hermeneutically sealed container that all these kids from all over the state would show up with their personal hobbies and interests and pet discoveries, and then we were all together all summer swapping and sharing these things. And by the time you left each year, you had all of this new culture you had discovered and absorbed that you kind of explored throughout the year, and then you went back the next summer and got more of it. And I did that for 5 years. So it was an intense cultural education in addition to the great books, the philosophy, the literature, the art and music that we were exposed to. So I was like supercharged during the summers, and then all of that would see me through the school years, and then I'd go back the next summer and get charged with more of it. And so I had, like I said, I had some really close friends at that program. I had we became close. We kind of were a little alumni group that continued to meet and associate with each other even after we had graduated from the program. And to this day, we're incredibly close. When I lost my partner, he's the friend that invited me back to New Orleans to stay with him and get back on my feet. And I owe him my life. I absolutely owe him my life. I was ready to go live out in the desert, and he's the one that convinced me to come back to civilization and take a chance on it again, because I was done after losing Mike. And so that was the Gifted program. And then, I went to the Gifted college after that, and I liked all the kids there. Wouldn't say I made any lifelong friends out of that. I was only there for a year. And then I kind of was back at home with my mom and the rest of my siblings, kind of slacking and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life and bebopping around from place to place. And that's when I met, I've talked about her before, but she was a friend that I went to high school with. And we were friendly in high school because the kids used to pick on her and her family and her sisters. They were Pentecostal. They had the long hair down to the butt, the denim skirts, no makeup, that kind of stuff. And so they got a lot of negative attention, and I was sympathetic to that. And we kind of took up for each other and looked out for each other. But after high school, I went for one semester at the local university before I decided to not pursue college anymore. And she was also there that semester. We used to meet in the student lounge and have lunch together and chat. So after I left college, after that semester, she continued to stay in touch. And this was in the VCR age, where you would rent movies. You'd go to the VCR store, you'd pick out movies, like a stack of 3 or 4 movies over the weekend, and you'd watch the movies. Blockbuster, before Blockbuster even. And so we had this thing where, like, sometimes once or twice a week, she'd call me up and say, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And we'd go pick out a movie, or she'd show up with movies she picked out. And she worked at a grocery store, so she'd always bring snacks, and she would show up with snacks and movies. I remember we liked the Suddenly salads, and she'd show up with a Suddenly salad every time. We'd make the Suddenly salad together, and we'd eat the snacks and watch the movies. And we got really close through doing that. We talk on the phone a lot. She was one of the first people I came out to, and she was super, super supportive. They were Pentecostal, but she was, her position was it's not her job to judge, it's God's job. That's his role. And her role is to just love me and be my friend. And so I developed a very positive association with religion and Christians through her and her family. And she was like my movie watching friend. And through watching movies with her regularly, like we did, I discovered the power of movies to bond people. And to this day, like, watching movies or TV shows together has been a big source of the bonds and connections that I've been able to form with people. Music was another, which I learned from the Gifted program. But Dustin kind of laid the foundation from all of that, because we were constantly bonding over books and music and movies as kids and growing up throughout our lives. And so I talked about the feminist that when I worked at the bookstore, the Walden Books, the feminist coworker that I became close to, that I ended up moving to Austin with. We also bonded over books and movies. So I guess basically arts and culture, shared interest in common arts and culture and subcultures can really bond you. I found a lot of friends through the music that I like, the punk, post-punk, goth type music. If I found someone that was into The Cure or Susie and the Banshees, or God forbid, Sonic Youth in South Louisiana, we were probably going to be good friends for a long, long time, just over the fact that we spent our time listening to the same music separately. And we could get together and bond and talk about that. I bonded over movies. If you found someone that was into the same books as you, like the first serious author I got into, and this was about the same time, was Carl Jung. So if I found another person that was into Carl Jung, especially in South Louisiana, it was a small town. There wasn't a lot of us that had those interests. So when you found one, they became a valuable, valuable resource to you. And you nurtured and developed that bond. Moved to Austin, came back. And when I came back to Austin, what happened there, I didn't so much make new friends as I rekindled past connections with previous friends. So the girl I talked about from the junior high school and we were both living in the city at this point. We were from a smaller satellite town, but we had both moved to the main city that centered the towns around it. And so we became closer then than we were in high school and started hanging out more. She was at the local university that I had attended again. The Christian girl, the Pentecostal girl, again, developed deeper bonds. I had some music friends from the small town that were now living in the city. A lot of them were people from school and people from that smaller town who had moved to the larger city as adults, just like I did. And we all kind of found each other because we had this common background from being from this one town. And so those bonds just deepened from being adults and living in the city together and having to live adult lives. There was a girl from the Gifted program that I was kind of friends with at the program, got like acquaintances, but we discovered each other as adults living in this town and became super, super close. Same movies, same music, same books. She was lesbian or bisexual. There were a few of us that turned out, we discovered that we shared common alternative sexualities. So we would go to the bars together, and we had like this little LGB community formed of past friends that were all discovering their sexualities at the same time. And so that all kind of, I was really close to that little group. And this was the era of Friends, the TV sitcom. So this was kind of like my friends group. We'd go to the coffee shops together and hang out and talk philosophy and play board games. I'm noticing the time, so I'm going to have to accelerate this a little bit. As you know, I took off to the West Coast at some point after meeting that guy on AOL. And really, I just wanted to get out of Louisiana. And ended up in Vegas for a while. I met a lot of friends in Vegas from the gay community. Vegas was really my first time having a positive experience in the gay community and making actual friends. And then I met Mike my partner who I lost in 2007, and that was the closest friendship I've ever had in my life. I have never been closer or more intimate with another human being before, and I didn't even know that kind of closeness and intimacy was possible. And I've had some pretty close, deep friendships before Mike. Some of it was we met because we had the same, like, I was dating a narcissist in Vegas, and that was my first experience with that type of person. And I had to leave Vegas over. He got so crazy. I was living with him, and I just left and drove back to Louisiana, and it devastated me. And narcissists can really damage you psychologically and emotionally. So after I left, while I was in Louisiana, he met Mike, who lived in Connecticut, and talked Mike into moving to Vegas, and they started dating and bought a house and all kind of stuff. And he's a con artist, so he tried to screw Mike out of the house and money and everything else. So when I found this out, I contacted Mike, and I'm like, look, I don't know if you want to hear from me or not, but I'm this dude's ex, and I'm telling you he's a con artist, and he's ripping you off. And I remember Mike's response. He's like, Jeff, I am so grateful that you've contacted me. I was starting to suspect that I was being ripped off, but the only people I know in Vegas and I'm surrounded with are his friends, and none of them were confirming or validating my perceptions. So to hear me say that, yes, what you think is happening is actually happening, was very affirming to Mike. And so he flew to Louisiana. Mike was deaf. He read lips. He had a cochlear implant. He booked a trip to Louisiana for Labor Day weekend, and we met in person, and we bonded instantly from having endured, we were like two Holocaust survivors, and from having the same experience of dating this really awful person, it was like survivor bond. And we became so close just in that weekend. And I made plans to move to Vegas. We were going to start dating. And in the meantime, I was making all of his phone calls for him because he had trouble on the phone because of his hearing. I was setting him up with lawyers. I had a paralegal friend in Vegas, and we were figuring out how to plot and scheme to get the house back in his name and get his money back and get this other guy out of his life. They were living together at this point. And so eventually we did. Eventually he got most of what he could recover back from this guy. And we ended up dating and becoming a couple, and we just grew closer and closer and closer. And I loved him so much. I only wanted what he wanted for himself and what was best for himself. Like, we never fought. We had, like, the first 6 months of any relationship, really, you're going to have little bumps where you're trying to learn each other's ways and get adjusted to each other. So we went through some of that. But after about 6 months, that leveled off. And we just became closer and closer and closer through living together, through maintaining a house together, through we had TV shows that we were really into, reality TV, and this was the time around TiVo, and we were up to like 41 shows a week at one point that we'd record on the TV and watch throughout the week. And in addition to keeping jobs and maintaining the household and social life in Vegas and everything else. So it was a really special place, a special time. We called our home the Sanctuary because Vegas is a crazy city. Vegas is a cutthroat city. It's like Secret Survivor constantly. And if somebody is telling you hi in Vegas, you better ask why and what they want from you, because nobody's friends in Vegas just to be friends. So to have somebody like Mike that you had that bond of trust with was invaluable in a city like that. And our home was the Sanctuary, and it's where we could come from the outside world, and we had our own space that we were creating it could be ours and whatever we wanted it to be. And my mental health has never been better. I've never been more of an adult than I was with Mike. And I had a job. I was teaching. That was me at my peak. And part of it was because of Mike and the support that he gave me and we gave each other, and the environment we were able to create together. We were committed to creating a healthy environment having a healthy relationship. We never fought. He was deaf, but we could talk for hours. Mike was so intelligent. He was gifted. If there was a problem or conflict, we could talk it out like adults and problem solve and work it out together. We didn't want to make each other feel bad about any of it. And like we would fight over the last pizza, trying to have the other person, like trying to let the other person take it. Like, there's the last piece of pizza. Do you want it? No, you take it. No, I want you to have it. No, I want you to have it. No, Mike, I'm serious. Take it. I genuinely want you to have that last piece. No, Jeff, you have it. And so if we were like fighting to give each other everything we could, and but in a playful way, not there was no. Our communication was very healthy and adult. Our living together, our experiences together. And I knew when I lost him that I was probably never going to find another relationship like that in my life. But I did like a few years later, after going back to New Orleans, I met the guy up here through the internet, and he was such a similar neurotype to me. He was gifted. He was super intelligent. Again, we had similar interests. Movies, books, music overlapped. That's always a good sign. So it seemed like Mike and I, in the beginning, in the sense of having enough common areas of overlap to build a relationship on, but he did not have the skills to. He was an introvert. He was autistic, ADHD, which I am too, but instead of meshing harmoniously like I thought we would, I thought because we have common experiences as this neurotype that we would intuitively be able to support each other and be allies. We clashed instead. Like everything about our neurodivergence seemed to get on the other's nerves and be noise that just interfered with healthy communication. And he had his own issues, which I won't go into, and he was psychologically abusive, and he was just an awful person all around. Just even watching him around his friends and watching how he treated other people just chilled my blood. He was a sociopath. And so I was out of there pretty quickly. I made some decent friends in Seattle. Two of them, I was my roommate for 12, 8, 9, almost 10 years, about 9 years. We spent COVID together. He was from North Dakota and kind of like me, grew up rural area, so we had a common socioeconomic background. We liked the same TV shows and movies, so we spent a lot of time doing that. And he was just a really close, supportive friend who I cherished dearly. I ended up leaving COVID. Seattle was becoming too expensive, and I had lost my job before COVID, and I just needed a cheaper place. And I had an opportunity to move to another city in Washington State for about a third what I was paying in Seattle. So that's what ended me living in Seattle. But to this day, he's the one of the dearest friends that I've taken from living in Seattle, which was an awful, hostile place. So to even have that one friend. And the other friend I want to talk about is my Seattle friend. He's a black guy from Louisiana, and he was part of the peer mental health community. And I met him at a few meetings and trainings, and we were in a training together. And I won't go into the story today, although I'm sure I'll tell it sometime. It's the Kleenex box story. And they told us something in the training that didn't quite. There were 3 of us in the training from Louisiana, although we didn't know it at the time. And when they started talking about this Kleenex box and how you shouldn't hand someone a Kleenex if they're crying, because some psychologists had done research that it takes them out of their process or something, we all kind of objected at the same time. And like, well, wait a minute, back home, we hand each other we had people Kleenexes all the time, and they're nothing but grateful and appreciative. And of course they told us, well, you're doing it wrong. And we're like, no, I'm not. Don't tell me. If you're not from my culture, don't tell me not to do it like we do it in my culture, because I know it works for my people. And so that's kind of when we discovered we were from Louisiana. We were having similar experiences in Seattle with this weird culture. And culturally, we were so similar. So the more we hung out and spent time together and made our way through the Seattle community and the mental health community and these trainings and the way they do things up here, we started to notice that how different we were. Like I thought I was just the lone freak from Louisiana that was just bumbling about in Seattle culture, but watching another person bumble in the exact same way that came from the same culture, we became so close and so bonded. We still talk to this day. In fact, he'll probably come on as a guest one day. He's an excellent peer. He has lots of valuable insights to offer. I would love to devote a whole series of shows actually to him. But that's an instance of bonding through, like just like Mike and I kind of bonded through adversity. Me and this guy bonded through. I mean, it honestly feels like immigrants. We're immigrants from Louisiana in Washington State, having similar experiences, similar cultural barriers and cultural shock and cultural friction. And so through that, we developed a deep appreciation for each other and a deep appreciation for our roots, our Louisiana roots, because we see a lot of the positive things that came out of growing up in the rural South that city people just don't understand, but that we think are valuable and we're determined to hang on to, even in the face of the pressure and hostility to adopt other cultural ways of doing things and assimilate to a culture that's not ours. So I'm going to have to end it here because I have to go get ready for that other Zoom. I'll be starting it in just a few minutes. So if you're gifted, twice exceptional, neurodivergent, and you want to attend, just find me at Primal Hex, PRIMALHEX on Twitter or at gmail.com, and I'll get you hooked up with the Zoom this evening. And dance party tomorrow, 80s dance. You can bond and make friends. I've made a lot of friends online and through Zoom as well. So that's another place for friendship, community connections, community bonds, and activities to bond over. So if you want to build community and be part of something fun and healthy and interesting, contact me. That's what I'm trying to do here. So